you were infected with a rage virus while trapped in a building with coworkers you hate and a boss that just wrongfully fired you, what would you do? In this How to Be video, I'm going to break down the mistakes made by our disgruntled employee, see if we can make better decisions, and ultimately attempt to beat the ID7 virus in Mayhem. There's a throne in hell for whoever invented office buildings. These are places where the human spirit is sacrificed to the god of profit, where morality is a fireable offense, and where promotions are earned in the scalps of your frenemies. Welcome to corporate America, where your boss makes $1, you make a dime, and you take the heat for the company's crimes. If you're Derek, being a good person, or worse, a great employee, is a surefire way to end up with a target on your back the next time middle management needs a fall guy to hide their mistakes. But what happens if you're quarantined in a building when an aggressive virus infects the whole office on the day you're unjustly fired? Office buildings are soul-sucking purgatories on a good day. Throw in an airborne contaminant that preys on your emotions and transforms you into a murderous, chaotic juggernaut with a get-out-of-jail-free card, and well, things are bound to get interesting. With the virus wreaking havoc on our impulse control, we literally have no choice but to punish those who have wronged us. Let's see if we can survive our contagious crusade for revenge. 5 minutes in the future, the ID7 virus has taken the planet by storm, making the infected slaves to their wildest impulses. They're called redders on account of the virus's most obvious sign of infection, a blood red eye. ID7 seems particularly contagious in places full of pent-up rage and resentment, like your average law firm. In one case, a man named Neville Reed was cleared after murdering his coworker with a pen because his lawyer argued that he couldn't be held responsible for what he did while under the virus's influence. Our disgruntled employee Derek works at Towers & Smythe Consulting, the very law firm that helped Neville Reed win his case. As Derek tells us, this is a firm fueled by greed, duplicity, and moral decay, a place that ironically screens applicants for honesty, loyalty, and integrity, and then promptly wears them down into corporate drones that throw each other under the bus whenever the need arises. Derek found the loophole that helped clear Neville Reed of murder, but even that isn't enough to guarantee his position in the company. Derek now spends his days avoiding his sister and blowing off clients like Melanie Cross. Melanie needs an extra 2 months to keep her house from being foreclosed. She begs him to help her save her family's home, but he says it's out of his hands. There's a half dozen other people responsible for pieces of her case, and ultimately it's just not his problem. Melanie asks him for the name of the partner who signed off on her house's foreclosure, Irene Smythe, the woman who literally has her name on the building. When Melanie demands to speak with Smythe, Derek has security escort her out. After Melanie is gone, we learn the water Derek is drinking is contaminated with the ID7 virus before a secretary rushes in to warn him that his bosses are about to lay the blame for a botched case on his shoulders and fire him from the firm. Derek rushes off to try to save his job as a coworker he's recently blackmailed starts rubbing his red infected eye. The infection is spreading, and it only takes a sniffle here and a handshake there before the entire building is rubbing their red eyes and plotting vengeance against those who have wronged them. We should pause here to get the lay of this now infected land. The ID7 virus is like a zombie virus, only worse. Its victims are rash, violent, and unrelenting, but they can also still think, still talk, and still wield weapons against their enemies. The virus seems to target the human thalamus, the part of the brain that helps regulate impulse control, which means where you or I might avoid punching our boss for fear of getting fired, a victim of ID7 would curb stomp their head instead. The most visually obvious sign of the virus is a blood red eye. As this is the law firm that helped represent Neville Reed, everyone in this building should know this symptom. Seeing a coworker with a bloody eye should trigger us to alert somebody, so treatment can start sooner and we can get out of the building faster. Then it's time to self-isolate and avoid the infection and ensuing carnage. In a close proximity population like this office pool, unless you're wearing a mask and gloves or leave the building before encountering an infected person, transmission is highly likely. Viruses that spread like ID7 disperse through the air in water droplets, the kind we all give off when we talk, laugh, or sneeze. Cough into your hand and touch a doorknob without washing your hand? You better hope the person who opens the door next washes theirs before rubbing their nose. The least you could do is not rub your eyes with your bare hands after touching all those doorknobs and elevator buttons in a busy office, Derek. But Derek is already infected. His cells are mass-producing virus babies and his immune system is going haywire trying to battle for supremacy in his system. The same is happening in the bodies of his coworkers, and soon they're going to start violently acting out their darkest whims and desires. Another preventative or rehabilitative measure to take after everyone mauls each other would be to get everyone some professional therapy from our video sponsor BetterHelp, which you too can utilize by using my link in the description. BetterHelp is the largest therapy platform worldwide and provides convenient, discreet, and affordable access to over 20,000 licensed therapists available anytime, anywhere through a computer, tablet, or smartphone. With a new year, focus on a new you with healthy mental health habits by utilizing professional therapy done securely and more affordably than traditional offline therapy. If you've ever searched for a therapist, you know it can take weeks or even months just to get a phone call back. But with BetterHelp, get a match quickly. Getting set up with BetterHelp is super easy. You simply head to their website, answer a handful of questions, then BetterHelp will assess your needs and based on your answers, will match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in as little as 48 hours. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist, and are also free to change therapists if needed. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. BetterHelp is available for clients worldwide, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp is offering you nerds 10% off your first month by using my link www.betterhelp.com/nerdexplains. That's BetterHelp. Join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Derek gets into the elevator, which is rigged with several security measures. In order to rise to the second highest level of the building, he has to phone a faceless security person who feeds him a code before the elevator button will respond to him. Derek confronts the company's director of operations, Kara Powell, someone the lower workers refer to as the Siren because she can sway the head lawyer at the firm, John Towers. She explains that she set him up to take the blame for a mishandled case with the company's biggest client, even though he never worked on the case. She offers him a deal, but Derek's too infected to consider it and demands to talk to the head boss himself. Derek and Kara get into the elevator, and we learn that only she has the access keycard to the boss's penthouse. When Derek confronts John Towers, Towers only confirms what Kara has already said. Someone has to take the fall for the company's mistake, and it's not going to be either of them. They send the Reaper to officially lay Derek off. The Reaper offers Derek a huge payoff to leave quietly. However, by accepting the money, Derek also has to admit to mishandling the case, meaning he could be disbarred or sued by the client. His infected eye is getting redder, and it's getting harder to repress his anger. Just as he's being escorted out, SWAT and the CDC surround his building, forcing everybody back inside. The office is now under quarantine. The CDC has administered a neutralizing agent for the virus through the air system, but all employees have to stay inside for 8 hours before it can take effect. The easiest way to avoid the carnage or to prevent yourself from doing something stupid if you know you're succumbing to the virus is to follow the same protocol for surviving an active shooter using the run, hide, fight strategies. The run strategy isn't possible here as the building is surrounded by SWAT and snipers, so you're gonna want to hide. You most likely aren't the Spartacus type hero that will survive. You will be the random coworker that gets blindsided by a pair of scissors to the jugular or mobbed by that PM team you put in a bad spot last week. No matter how good that ID7 pre-workout feels, this isn't the time to hit the gym. Grab something that can be used as a weapon, like those scissors. Then sneak into the nearest lockable office or storeroom and turn off the lights. If you can lock the door with a key, lock yourself inside and then throw the key away. This will prevent you from being attacked or attacking somebody else. To take extra precaution, don't rely on the lock to keep you safe. Barricade the door with objects from the door to the opposite wall. Pack the objects so tightly that the opposite wall acts as a brace against intruders. If there's a fire, you'll be somewhat trapped, but the sprinkler system should take care of it. Derek doesn't have any reason to avoid danger by self-isolating. He's just been fired. He's looking at a legal battle once he gets out anyways, and he may even be disbarred. Succumbing to ID7 and physically reorganizing his morally corrupt company probably sounds pretty great to him right now. Derek gets his first taste of the mayhem to come when the coworker he blackmailed earlier hauls off and punches him. Derek retaliates by stabbing his foot with a letter opener and throat punching him. His only friend at the firm, Ewan, steps in and pulls Derek back from the brink of murder. He tries to reason with Derek, but Derek's in fight mode now. There's a lot of elements at play here. You're locked in a quarantined building surrounded by snipers and SWAT, who should all be wearing full-face M40A1 protective masks with HEPA filters to actually prevent exposure to ID7. Your coworkers are turning feral, and your own body is provoking you to act out like a frat boy during rush week. Your beige office building has transformed into a battlefield where the only limitations are your own twisted imagination and the office supplies available around you. We also learn one important fact about this virus. Even though it affects our impulse control, it doesn't break down relationship dynamics. The ability to identify friend from foe is intact, which means that you're only at risk of hurting or being hurt by somebody you have a reason to attack. Everybody's aware of this virus by now, so considering anyone who you slighted could get infected, kill you, and get away with it, exercising a little bit of extra niceness and reconciling past misdeeds would be good proactive measures. In 2017, 28% of homicides were committed by somebody who knew the victim personally, and nearly 42% of victims were murdered during arguments. So being nice gives you an insane leg up in a situation like this, and once everybody's infected, the smartest thing to do would be to continue being nice. It doesn't matter if you just want to stay unmurdered or you want revenge. You can use kindness as a weapon to disarm your coworkers. With everyone trapped inside, things go from 0 to 60 quickly. The CDC warns the company that stressful work-related situations should be avoided, and that antidepressants and stimulants like coffee can make things even worse. Too bad this office building is filled with some of the most miserable self-medicating people on earth. Their bosses, of course, are only worried about getting everyone back to work so they don't lose $500,000 in profit by the end of the day, and they're furious about the potential loss. They are in no mood for pesky employee problems, so when Derek requests an audience with Towers and the 9 partners to get his revenge, he's fed a faulty elevator code that drops him to the basement instead, where he's ambushed by the company's hitmen. In an emergency, you should always use the stairs to move around a tall building like this one. Elevators can get stuck or shut down, or in this case, be controlled by sadistic people outside the elevator. This makes the elevator a huge ambush threat. If you get trapped in an elevator controlled by a pissed off counterparty that starts going down when you expect it to go up, at the very least, try pressing the stop emergency button to keep yourself from plunging towards whatever awaits you below. If it doesn't stop, prepare for potential attack. When the door opens, Derek is immediately yanked off his feet by one of the Bull's minions because he isn't prepared to defend himself. Close quarters like an elevator can make fighting difficult, but he doesn't know what's going to happen to him once he leaves the elevator. His goal here should be to stay in the elevator, kick his attacker out, and go up a floor if they haven't locked the elevator in place, which it doesn't appear to be since Ewan used the elevator to come to rescue Derek moments later. If Derek had managed to take the elevator back up a floor, Ewan would not have come down to rescue him, leading to his premature death. It's only through plot armor that Derek doesn't die right here. John Towers could and should have told his men to just kill him when the elevator doors open. Derek is beaten senseless by the company's muscle man, a sadistic guy called the Bull. He and his guys take Derek's phone and call Towers, who warns Derek against trying to get away with murder because he's infected with ID7. The Bull beats and maces him, but before things can get worse, Derek is saved by Ewan, who unfortunately dies defending him. The Bull knocks Derek out. Once trapped in the supply room with 3 attackers, Derek needs to get back to his feet as quickly as possible. A standing position is always stronger than one where you're on the ground. Once standing, he can search for a weapon, avoid someone chasing him, or fight back with kicks, punches, and by using the attacker's momentum against them. Since he's on the ground, Derek needs to roll onto his back and chamber his legs by tucking them to his chest, so that when someone reaches for him, he can use one leg to kick the attacker's stomach, and the other to kick his face, knocking him far enough back so that Derek kicking him back to his feet. If you are pepper sprayed, your eyelids will shut tight and you'll lose control over them. It's called a blepharospasm. The Bull wasn't using this as a deterrent, more like an appetizer before more attacks. To continue being able to fight back, you can pry your eye open. When Derek's friend Ewan came to the rescue, he did a great tackle, knocking one of the assailants to the floor. However, once Ewan had the goon on the ground, he should have immediately stood up. Kicking the goon to immobilize him rather than kneeling over him would have allowed him to remain in a standing position to fend off an additional attack. Kneeling like this left him vulnerable to attack from the Bull, which ultimately cost him his life. Technically speaking, it takes about 132 pounds force to penetrate the skull. It's highly unlikely that the force that Ewan hit the nail would have driven the nail into his skull, in which case Ewan and Derek could have stood back to back to take on the 3 attackers on a more even playing field. And as terrible as it is to say, the moment Ewan dropped dead, Derek should have fled the room. It's a tragic turn of events, but in the event of a gang assault, which this is, you need to stay on your feet, stay on the move, and get out of there as quickly as possible. Derek wakes up trapped with Melanie Cross, the woman trying to save her home earlier. She's infected and attacks him for not helping her, so Derek strikes a deal with her. If she helps him get to the top of the building so he can get revenge against his bosses, she can get revenge against Smythe, the partner who foreclosed on her family's house. No longer enemies, Derek MacGyvers a phone to call the client his law firm screwed over. He gets Towers to listen in as the client fires the law firm. Towers orders his men to kill Derek in retaliation, but Derek's waiting for them and uses the element of surprise to beat them unconscious with some scrap wood and his fists. Okay, a couple big things to keep in mind here. The first is that even though Neville Reed was acquitted of murder because of the ID7 virus, that doesn't mean Derek or Melanie will be. Getting someone off on a technicality in one trial doesn't mean every trial afterward would work the same way. The American legal system isn't cut and dry like that, and Derek was on the legal team that got Neville acquitted. Every one of these 1,000 ID7 outbreaks is going to be treated like its own criminal case, and the circumstances that saved Neville from jail may not apply here. There's office cameras everywhere in Derek's building, and these will be analyzed frame by frame as as evidence. And it's not like Derek and Melanie are in the penthouse when they decide to murder the partners. They have to go out of their way to kill these people and navigate 9 floors of crazed coworkers to do so. Also, since Derek was on the Neville Reed case, he should know that because of the outbreak, any contract or legal agreement they forced the 9 to sign during quarantine is probably moot anyways. Even if revenge is still the plan, taunting their future victims is a shallow victory that costs Derek and Melanie more than it's worth. Before Derek calls the client's company, they have the element of surprise on their side. They simply needed to escape the room and proceed to the penthouse where they could exact their revenge. They could have covered their faces with masks or fabric to make them harder to recognize and use the chaos of the office as cover as they climbed. By giving away that element of surprise, they've just made revenge 1,000 times more difficult for themselves. Sure, the partners could have figured out what they were up to when they spotted Derek on a higher floor, but by then Derek would be much closer to his target than he is here, in the building's basement. Additionally, as we'll see in a minute, Derek and Melanie are about to equip themselves with weapons from a maintenance locker, something they should have done before placing that phone call. While it was smart to use Melanie as bait so Derek could attack these goons from behind, Derek hits one with a piece of wood, which is far too large to be swung with enough force to effectively knock this guy out. The hammer Derek finds in maintenance would have been a far more effective weapon, and Melanie should have had a backup weapon just in case Derek's sneak attack didn't work. Worst case, I could always abandon Melanie and run if the tower sent too many well-armed men after me. It's a traitorous move to Melanie because while she isn't the target, she might become one. Tough call, considering staying to fight 4 well-armed thugs is pretty much instant death for a skinny desk jockey. Derek opens a maintenance locker full of power tools and he and Melanie suit up with all the weapons they can find, including a nail gun and an electric handsaw. They strategize. They need to take the Reaper's key card on floor 2, which will give them access to the 7th floor, which is where the siren is. Then they need to take her key card, which has access to the penthouse, where they can get revenge against Towers and Smythe. You have to love any prep scene that involves power tools, but a nail gun isn't going to be as useful as they think it is. Low velocity nail guns like this have front safeties that need to be pressed or pulled manually to fire each nail. They also fire nails at around 130 psi, which would only be effective at point blank range. After a few feet, they'll just bounce off of a person. The hammer is the smarter choice. It's lightweight, can be used with a single hand, and is multifunctional as they can use it to smash windows and desk drawers open. The electric saw could come in handy for breaking and entering, more for neck sawing. A crowbar would be helpful for smashing heads and prying doors open if there's one in that disorganized heap. And I might also grab the rope or cord seen here, and a hook-like tool to potentially grapple hook my way up the central courtyard shaft to the penthouse and skip all the mayhem in between. In that vein, battling their way from keycard to keycard isn't the easiest or quickest way to get to the penthouse. Remember, people are lashing out at coworkers that anger them. No one has a grudge against Melanie because she doesn't work here, and wearing a simple disguise would make it more difficult to recognize Derek. Then, they could just take the stairs. While they would definitely encounter potential threats along their climb, their weapons and gear should make walking up relatively easy. If the doors between the floors are locked, which they don't seem to be, they could use the electric saw to cut off the door hinges or to saw through the locking mechanism entirely. They could also try pulling the fire alarm, as some buildings automatically unlock doors in the event of a fire. Even if neither of these options worked, they could also just use their tools to completely destroy the doors and gain access to higher floors that way. This could get them to the 8th floor, the floor just below the penthouse, without fighting anyone. Once on the 8th floor where the siren's office is located, they could take her penthouse access card. With the element of surprise on their side, she wouldn't have time to call the partners for help, forcing her to bargain the key card for her life. They could even take her with them as insurance. Or once they reach the 8th floor, they could open the elevator doors and climb up the inside of the elevator shaft to the next floor. While not exactly safe, it reduces the distance they have to travel to reach their goal down to 14 feet, which is the average height between stories in an office building. At that point, they could fashion a ladder out of the scrap materials using Melanie's nail gun or creating a climbing rope by knotting fire hose, which should be available on each level in those emergency wall kits. Instead, Derek and Melanie confront the Reaper, who barricades himself in his office when Melanie tries to shoot him with a nail gun. They try to break in with a supply cart, but Melanie isn't keeping watch and 2 security guards are able to get close enough to tase her. Derek is forced to play keep away from 2 prowling security guards now. The Reaper emerges from his office to find Melanie still immobile from being tasered and begins beating the crap out of her. She's able to toss Derek the nail gun, driving the Reaper back into his office. Derek kicks in the door. The Reaper tells Derek not to shoot shoot the messenger, but emotions rise so high and so fast that in the split second the Reaper hands over his key, he's able to use pruning scissors to stab Derek's hand into the desk, tackle Melanie to the floor, and go for the nail gun. While office workers bet on who will win, Melanie uses the electric handsaw to saw through the Reaper's chest cavity, and then she rips the scissors from Derek's hand. Alright, these two are relying far too much on chance to reach the top of the building. Chance, luck, and circumstance will get you killed long before you can cave your boss's brain in while hopped up on the viral equivalent of PCP. Melanie should be guarding their rear while Derek tries to get into the Reaper's office, poised to attack any guards or crazed coworkers as they approach. And that lightweight mail cart Derek is using to ram the door isn't gonna do anything. He should just use his foot to kick the door in right beside the doorknob, which will break the locking mechanism. Or he could use his hammer to smash the window to the side of the door. As for being tased, a taser works by overriding muscular control with an electric shock. Melanie should be in control of her body the second the guard stops pressing the taser's button. Once Melanie is tased, Derek should grab the nail gun and fire off suppressive shots to keep the guards back, giving her a chance to recover, or give him the chance to use his shirt to insulate his hand so he can remove the taser barbs from her body if she's still being immobilized. This would leave her available to fight the guards or Lester when he comes out to attack her. Once inside Lester's office, they should not give the Reaper any chance to plead his case. He's already attacked Melanie and he's hopped up on 97. They should just kneecap him with a nail gun and take the key card. Instead, they let the Reaper get the drop on them and Derek gets his hand run through, likely injuring a muscle in his hand called the adductor pollicis, which would make it difficult for him to grip things or people with that hand moving forward, weakening his ability to fight in the hours to come. Melanie did not have her gun trained on Lester like she should, enabling him to pin her down too. At that point, Melanie should have stuck the saw in his throat instead of trying to saw through his rib cage. His neck is the softer, more vulnerable target, and she's more likely to hit a vein, artery, or cut off his airway before he can turn the nail gun on her. While you never want to remove an object that you're impaled with until medical professionals do it for you so you don't bleed out or cause further injury, Derek isn't gonna bleed to death from a hand injury, and he needs both hands operational to fight off any attackers. So removing the scissors was necessary. Derek and Melanie take a quick break to film a taunting video for the partners in which they set the body of the Reaper on fire. Towers calls the siren and warns her that they're coming for her penthouse key. He offers to make her a partner at the firm if she destroys the key card, and she agrees. However, she gives the card to her assistant to hide instead. As chaos descends across the building, Derek and Melanie wait to ambush the siren, and the partners put a bounty of $450,000 on Derek's head. Derek and Melanie realize that they only have 4 hours left before they won't have legal immunity for murder, and charge after the siren head on. To their surprise, the siren has rallied the workers on her floor to her side. Battle lines are drawn and the fight commences. The siren runs for safety, leaving Derek and Melanie to dispatch the siren's 5 lackeys. Using hammers, wrenches, and pure adrenaline, the pair come out victorious. Talk about incriminating evidence. This video they record of Derek reading pieces of the Neville Reed trial report out loud is going to be exhibit number 1 at their murder trial. If you're going to record anything during your murder spree, babble incoherently about how your boss is a lizard alien who forced your mom to move to Neptune. Make the psychologist think you're out of your mind. Also, by now you should know what I'm going to say. Don't give away your element of surprise. By the time the partners learned of the Reaper's death, Derek and Melanie could have already cornered the siren in her office and taken her keycard from her. Instead, they've given their enemy time to prepare and put a $450,000 bounty on Derek's head. Now they'll have to survive 5 fights with armed attackers before they can get to the keycard. Don't get me wrong, this is going to be a glorious cinematic fight with hammers, nail guns, fire extinguishers, and scissors. The office building is a veritable warehouse of impromptu weaponry. Carts, computers, chairs, and flimsy cubicle walls reinforced with metal skeletons, letter openers, tacks, and printers to slam down on people's heads. And that's all before we remember the moral of the John Wick saga. You can always kill somebody with a pencil. I don't know, maybe this ID7 virus is getting to me because all this mayhem looks exhilarating and pure. An incredibly risky, dangerous time, but with a few smart shots with that nail gun, we might just be on our way to that penthouse before we know it. Oh wait, all it takes is one false move to finish us off in a fight of 5 against 2. Ultimately, unless you're Jean-Claude Van Damme, your first and only goal when attacked by a group is to escape. If you can't or won't, here are a few things to keep in mind to protect yourself from getting beaten to the point where you can't fight anymore. First and foremost, if you have a nail gun that fires like a 9mm, use it. Then out your attackers before they can even get close to you. Second, control your position relative to the group. Don't just storm into the center. Contrary to modern action movies, a gang is not going to attack you one at a time. Instead, position yourself yourself so that you're at the edge of the group so you can attack the first attacker before the second and third can get to you. And if you have a buddy who can fight with you, then stick together. Don't divide and conquer. Third, once you've attacked the first, control your movement so the attacker you've wounded is between you and the rest of the group. This will leave a gap to the side where you can escape before they surround you. Always move so that they can't form a circle around you. Your strategy should be to manipulate them into a line so that only one can attack you at any given time, giving you even odds of being able to disable them and allowing you to escape at the first opportunity. Here, they're just taking way too many unnecessary risks by allowing this pack of infected to land blow after blow on their bodies. All it takes is one letter opener to the stomach and you won't get your chance to kill the big bad boss. After the fight, Derek and Melanie confront the siren in her office and negotiate for the keycard. But when the assistant brings the keycard, it's melted beyond all recognition. The siren calls out her assistant for being a useless nobody, and the assistant reveals that she's made a deal with the partners to burn the card in exchange for a promotion. Then she stabs her boss to death. Derek and Melanie taunt the partners again, wagging the siren's dismembered tongue around in the video. Towers retaliates by desecrating Ewan's dead body. Derek tells Melanie that in order to void her family's house foreclosure, she needs the signature of a partner. They learn the partners have blocked all movement in the elevators without a keycard, so Derek and Melanie decide to visit Ray in IT. Pro tip, don't trust people you abuse. As I've said, this virus doesn't break down relationship dynamics. The siren was terrible to her assistant before ID7 ever got involved, and she should know better than to trust or insult her now. Second pro tip, if you've just sicked 5 employees on your enemies, don't return to your office like everything's just gonna blow over. The siren should have used her keycard to join the 9 on the top floor, both protecting herself and preventing Derek and Melanie from getting the keycard. Now that we know Derek and Melanie have an ally in the IT department, this could have also been one of the first places they tried to shortcut their climb. Ray might have had the access codes to the elevator, and even if he doesn't, he might have a way of shortcutting or overriding the program that runs the elevator. But since they're only one story from the top floor now, they shouldn't be heading back down to IT. The 9 are narcissists, so it's very likely the stairs reach the top floor to give them an exit in the case of a fire. Derek and Melanie should climb up one more floor and tear the door down. Even if the 9 somehow paid off the builders to stop the stairs at the 8th floor, they could shimmy up the elevator shaft or scale the courtyard shaft. The pair asks Ray to mess with Smythe's computer. By stealing the files from her computer, they get her to negotiate with them in order to get them back. Smythe tells Towers that even though the meeting is a bad idea, they let her pick the location on the lower levels. She chooses a room with a gun taped to the bottom of the table. Unfortunately for her, they check the room before she gets there. Smythe hands over the keycard, but when Melanie tries to get her to sign her family's paperwork, Smythe refuses. A fight breaks out between Melanie and Smythe as Derek is blindsided by the bull, who knocks the pistol out of Derek's hand. Both fights are brutal. The bull fires 7 rounds to empty the gun and tosses it, then pulls out his brass knuckles to have some fun with Derek before trying to blind him with mace. Derek narrowly escapes by turning his head at the last second and taking the mace to his mouth, then spinning it back into the bull's eyes and stabbing him in the head with the screwdriver. They both corner Smythe, who in a last-ditch effort to save herself, reveals the keycard will only work with an access code. Derek and Melanie's plot armor is getting thicker by the second. It is sheer luck that the bull came alone, and it would have been so easy to send an entire horde of armed guards to kill our heroes and take the hard drive by force. Not to mention that Derek has been beaten by the bull before, which is why fighting him here was more than likely to result in Derek's death than a victory for him and Melanie. He's ultimately saved by the bull throwing his gun away rather than using it, and neither you nor I should rely on that sort of luck to survive the day. Derek should also have anticipated the bull's arrival, as Smythe was not likely to come to a lower floor alone. He should have known better than to place his back to an unlocked door in the conference room, and held a gun poised to fire in case of an attack. Instead of attempting to tackle the bull in the hallway, he should have simply raised the gun and fired. The bull may be anti-gun, but you don't have to be when your life is on the line. Hand-to-hand combat is like bad gambling if you're untrained, and even worse when you're up against someone who pushes people around for a living. The gun also appears to use a double-stack magazine, meaning it holds far more than the 7 rounds the bull fired before tossing it away. The gun's slide also does not lock back, meaning there is still at least 1 bullet left in the chamber. Derek could and should go for the gun. Since he didn't, taking a mouthful of pepper spray and spitting it back into the bull's eyes was a clever choice. It prevented him from being blinded and gave him the chance to stab the bull in the head. When Derek returns to the conference room for Melanie, Smythe offers Derek the elevator code in exchange for betraying Melanie. Derek agrees, but gives Melanie the ability to break her restraints by unscrewing the back bar of the chair she's strapped to so she can wiggle herself free. After Smythe has given Derek the access code to the penthouse, Derek shows Smythe the screws he removed before Melanie gets her revenge with a hammer. Derek should have gone back for the gun the bull tossed away immediately. If it's empty, at least you know now so Smythe can't use it against you. Betraying Melanie wasn't Derek's only option here. When he returned to the conference room, he and Melanie could have tied Smythe to a chair, taken the key card, and dragged her to the elevator. Once they learned that they would need an access code as well as the card, they could have tortured Smythe for the information by hurting high-pain, non-life-threatening parts of her. Having her toes or toenails ripped off would probably put her grudge against Melanie for destroying her hard drive into perspective. Betraying Melanie was too risky. If Derek didn't loosen the screws up just right and Melanie couldn't wiggle out of it after the elevator door closed, she'd have been screwed. If Melanie had freed herself before he could tell her he was still on her side, she would have likely attacked him too. It also relied on Smythe not tying Melanie up herself and not watching him tie Melanie up. Showing her the bolts also gives Smythe moments to prepare for Melanie's attack. The betrayal also forces Derek to face the 9 by himself, injured and with his store of weapons depleted. If a fight of 5 against 2 is tough, he has no reason to suspect a potential fight of 1 on 8 is going to be any easier. Grabbing the gun earlier on would have enabled Derek to just pop a bullet in the back of Smythe's head after she gave him the access code, ensuring Melanie's survival and putting the final boss battle on easy difficulty. Derek arrives to the penthouse to a round of applause from the partners, who offer to make him one of the team for breaking through their defenses. When he refuses, he's attacked by a secretary wielding a broken glass before he confronts the golf club wielding towers. With less than 2 minutes left of the virus's effectiveness, Derek gains the upper hand and gets the partners to out towers before he tosses him down the building's 9-story courtyard to his death. With his lust for revenge satisfied, Derek signs the firm's partnership offer, signs Melanie's foreclosure paperwork, and quits immediately after to retire as the next generation's Bob Ross. This is the boardroom from hell, and Derek is far too cavalier as he steps inside. Derek's head should be on a swivel, prepared for an ambush. He should clear the corner of the room behind him before hearing the 9 out, and when the women attempt to approach, he should loudly tell them not to come closer. If they continue, he should kill one of them to make it clear that he's not messing around. These people just tried to have him murdered 6 ways to Sunday, and they'll try again here. Derek is exhausted. His last weapons are a wrench and a set of brass knuckles, and he's running out of time for revenge before the quarantine clock runs out. If he had remembered the gun, it would have made quick work of these horrible bosses. At least he remains level-headed enough to know better than to sign the contract they offer, which wouldn't stand up after quarantine anyways. As it is, Towers is more rested than Derek and high on stimulants in addition to ID7. When the fight begins, it might help Derek to put the brass knuckles on and use them in concert with the wrench. The wrench could hold off Towers' club, allowing Derek to smash his hands with the knuckles. People expect attackers to go for their heads. The fingers can be a more surprising and useful target. Finally, when Derek has Towers at his mercy, he should not wait for 8 other people to vote him out of the tribal council, giving Towers a chance to fight back. Risks like this could cost him all the ground he's won. I say chuck Towers over the railing and be done with it. This is your I'm the captain now moment. Ultimately, Derek and Melanie could have enjoyed more playtime with the bosses if they had considered all of the building's options and chosen stealth rather than trying to go through various people with keycards to reach the penthouse. Computer systems fail, elevators stall, and crazy coworkers can be crazy. They were just as likely to be stabbed with a pencil or cracked over the head with a fire extinguisher as they were to succeed in their goal of toppling Towers and Smythe. If you are trapped with feral coworkers in an office building and don't have intricate plans for personal revenge, do the smart, dull thing and barricade yourself in an office until the cavalry arrives. But if revenge is your goal, it's best to think of mechanical and tangible solutions to your problems that minimize risks of bodily harm. Derek and Melanie could have reached the penthouse quickly by using the stairs effectively, climbing up the central courtyard shaft or shimmying up the elevator shaft. In many ways, the plot armor of our 2 anti-heroes protected them from gruesome death several times, but there were definitely a few ways in which they could have strategically reached the penthouse and gotten their revenge without relying on keycards and access codes. For those reasons, I think the red-eye virus in Mayhem was beaten. Thanks for watching, and remember, avoid being that horrible coworker everyone wants to kill 5 minutes after a rage virus invades your office space.